The archive building stood quiet in the purple twilight of the Zenthari homeworld. Dust particles floated through narrow beams of light that cut through the tall windows. Historian Velmora walked down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing against the stone walls. She carried a recording device in her lower right hand and a data pad in her upper left. Today she would finally meet him. Commander Krelax, the veteran who refused all interviews for 60 years. The door at the end of the hall was old and heavy. Velmora pressed the entry panel and waited. Several moments passed before she heard movement inside. The door slid open with a grinding sound that spoke of age and neglect. Krelax stood in the doorway. He was tall, even for a Zenthari, with 4 arms that had once been strong, but now seemed tired. His crystalline eyes, which should have glowed bright blue, were dim and clouded. Scars covered his arms and chest, some old and faded, others that looked deliberately kept fresh. "You are the historian," Krelax said. It was not a question. "Yes, Commander. I am Velmora. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Krelax turned and walked back into the room. Velmora took this as permission to enter. The room was simple and dark. Shelves lined the walls filled with old books and data crystals. A single window looked out over the city below. 2 chairs sat facing each other in the center of the room. "Sit," Krelax said, lowering himself into one chair. Velmora sat across from him and activated her recording device. "Commander, I want to document your experiences in the human war. So many veterans are gone now. Your story needs to be preserved." Krelax was quiet for a long time. His eyes stared at something beyond the walls, beyond the present moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough like grinding stone. "Why do you want to know about the humans? The war is over. We have peace now." "Because the young ones are forgetting," Velmora said softly. "They see humans as our trade partners and allies. They do not understand what the war cost us, what we learned." Krelax's eyes focused on her. "What we learned," he repeated. "Yes, that is why I agreed to this meeting. Someone must remember. Someone must warn the next generation." He stood and walked to the window. The city lights were beginning to glow as darkness fell. "I was young when the war started, ambitious. I had risen through the ranks quickly. The High Council gave me command of a battle fleet. They told us the humans were primitive, confined to one small world and a few nearby moons, weak, easy to conquer." "That was the common belief," Velmora said. "We were fools," Krelax said. The words came out bitter and hard. "We knew nothing about them. We did not study them. We did not understand what they were." He turned back to face her. "Do you know what a pursuit predator is, historian?" Velmora searched her memory. "A creature that hunts by chasing prey over long distances?" "Yes. Most species in the galaxy evolved as ambush hunters or prey animals. We Zenthari were prey once long ago. We learned to build walls and weapons to protect ourselves. We learned careful, calculated warfare. Strike fast, strike hard, but always preserve your forces. Never lose more than you can afford." Krelax sat back down heavily. "Humans evolved differently. They hunted by walking for days, following wounded prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be faster or stronger. They only needed to never stop, to never give up." "I do not understand how this relates to warfare," Velmora said. "You will." Krelax leaned forward. "Let me tell you about the first battle, the day we arrived at Earth's moon." His eyes grew distant again, seeing the past. "Our fleet emerged from jump space near their moon. 50 warships, the pride of the Zenthari Empire. We expected the humans to surrender immediately when they saw our power. Instead, their communications channels filled with defiance. They told us to leave or face destruction. Krelax made a sound that might have been a laugh, but held no humor. We laughed. 50 ships against their 12 defenders. We moved forward to crush them quickly. That is when we learned our first lesson about humans. What happened? Velmora asked, leaning forward. They attacked us. 12 small ships against 50 large ones. They did not try to flee or negotiate. They came straight at us like madness itself. We destroyed 3 of their ships in the first minutes. Their remaining 9 kept coming. One of their ships was so badly damaged it could barely move. We thought it would retreat. Instead, it accelerated directly toward our flagship. Krelax's hands clenched. The ship rammed us. The captain aimed his dying vessel at ours and crashed into our hull at full speed. The explosion killed 300 of my crew. I was thrown across the bridge. When I stood up, I saw something that made my blood cold. He paused, and Velmora waited, barely breathing. The remaining human ships were broadcasting a message. Not a surrender, not a plea for mercy. They were playing music, loud, rhythmic, aggressive music. And they kept fighting. They lost 2 more ships, then 3 more, down to 3 vessels against our 47. And still they fought. What kind of species does that? Velmora whispered. That is what I asked myself, Krelax said. That was the question that haunted me through 5 years of war. What kind of species fights when defeat is certain? What kind of species never retreats, never surrenders, never stops? He met her eyes directly. I learned the answer, historian. And that answer terrifies me still. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the recording device. Outside, the city had gone dark, and the stars emerged in the sky. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, the small blue world that had brought the mighty Zenthari Empire to its knees. Tell me everything, Velmora said quietly. Krelax nodded slowly. Yes, you must know. All of it. Even the parts that bring me shame. Krelax stood and moved to a cabinet against the wall. He opened it and pulled out a small container. Inside was a piece of metal, twisted and burned. He held it carefully, as if it were something sacred or cursed. This is from Mars, he said, from the first ground battle where I truly understood what humans were. He returned to his chair, still holding the metal fragment. After the battle at Earth's moon, the High Council was angry. They sent more ships and ordered us to take the human colonies. Mars was their largest settlement after Earth. We expected it to fall quickly. We had 20,000 soldiers. They had maybe 5,000 defending the colony. Velmora made notes on her datapad. Those numbers should have meant easy victory. Should have, Krelax agreed. We landed our troops outside the main colony domes. Our plan was simple. Surround the colony, cut off their supplies, force surrender within a week. No need for massive casualties. Clean and efficient the Zenthari way. He turned the metal piece over in his hands. The humans had other ideas. The first night after we landed, they attacked our camps. Small groups, maybe 10 or 20 fighters. They hit us, killed several soldiers, and vanished into the Mars dust storms. We sent patrols to find them. The patrols did not return. Ambush tactics, Velmora said. More than that. Much more. When we found the bodies of our patrols, we discovered something disturbing. The humans had taken their weapons and supplies. They were using our own equipment against us. They learned how to operate Zenthari weapons in hours. Hours. Krelax set the metal piece on the table between them. The attacks continued every night for 3 weeks. We could not sleep. We could not rest. Every shadow might hide a human soldier. Every rock formation might conceal an ambush. Our troops became exhausted and afraid. Meanwhile, the humans seemed tireless. How is that possible? Velmora asked. They are smaller than us. They need more sleep than we do. That is what we thought. We were wrong. Yes, humans are smaller, but they can function on less rest than any species I know, and pain affects them differently. Krelax leaned back, his eyes distant with memory. I saw a human soldier take a plasma bolt to the shoulder. It should have killed her. Instead, she fell, got back up, and kept fighting. She killed 3 of my soldiers before we finally brought her down. When we examined her body, we found she had been wounded 4 times. 4 times. Any one of those wounds would have stopped a Zenthari warrior. There must be something in their biology, Velmora said. Yes, their bodies produce chemicals that block pain when they are injured or afraid. They call it adrenaline. It lets them keep fighting even when they should be dead. We learned this the hard way. Krelax stood again and paced the room. The memories seemed to make sitting impossible. The worst was when we finally broke through into one of their defense bunkers. Inside, we found 30 human soldiers. They had been holding that position for 4 days with no resupply. They should have run out of food and ammunition. They should have surrendered. But they did not, Velmora said quietly. No, they fought us with empty weapons, using them as clubs. They fought with their hands and teeth. 3 of them were wounded so badly they could barely stand, but their medics had kept them alive. Human medics are terrifying, historian. They will run through enemy fire to reach a wounded comrade. They will die to save others. I saw one medic drag 4 soldiers to safety while under direct fire. She was hit twice but did not stop. He turned to face Velmora. Do you understand what I am telling you? They do not abandon each other. Ever. A Zenthari commander knows when to withdraw, when to sacrifice a position to save the larger force. Humans do not think this way. They will die before they leave someone behind. That seems inefficient, Velmora said. That is what we thought. We were wrong. Their loyalty makes them stronger. A human soldier knows that their comrades will never abandon them. This makes them fight harder. They trust each other completely. That trust is a weapon we never anticipated. Krelax picked up the metal fragment again. This is from a human helmet. It belonged to a soldier named Danny Price. I mention his name because he taught me the most important lesson of the war. What lesson? Velmora asked. That humans do not know when to die. Krelax's voice dropped lower. Danny Price was hit by an explosion. His squad was trying to hold a supply depot. The blast threw him 10 meters. It broke several of his bones. It burned his skin. Any Zenthari would have died instantly or fallen unconscious. Price stood up. He picked up his weapon, and he fought for 6 more hours. Impossible, Velmora whispered. I saw it myself. He moved slowly, dragging one leg. Blood covered his armor. But he kept shooting. He kept giving orders to his squad. He kept fighting. When we finally overran the position, Price was still standing. He had 17 separate injuries. He should have been dead hours before. What happened to him? We captured him, took him to our medical unit. Our doctors could not believe he was alive. They asked him why he did not stop fighting, why he did not surrender when he was so badly hurt. Krelax sat down again, suddenly looking very old and tired. He said something I will never forget. He said, my friends needed me, so I stayed. That was all. No grand speech, no dramatic words, just simple loyalty. He stayed because his friends needed him. The room was quiet for a long moment. Did he survive? Velmora asked. Yes, we treated his wounds. Later he was exchanged in a prisoner transfer. I heard he went back to fighting as soon as he healed. That is another thing about humans. They heal and return to battle, again and again. They do not break. Krelax met Velmora's eyes. We broke, historian. Not them. Us. After 3 months on Mars, we had lost 8,000 soldiers. The humans had lost maybe 2,000. But their survivors were still fighting with the same intensity as the first day. Our soldiers were exhausted, traumatized, afraid. We withdrew from Mars and called it a tactical repositioning. The records say we won on Mars, Velmora said. The records lie. We ran away, and Mars was just the beginning. I had not yet seen what humans do when you truly threaten them. When you attacked their homeworld, that horror came later. He looked at the metal fragment one more time before placing it back in its container. Tomorrow I will tell you about the naval battles, about what humans do in space, about how they turned our own tactics against us. But for now, I need to rest. These memories are heavy. Velmora stood and bowed respectfully. Thank you, Commander. I will return tomorrow. As she walked to the door, Krelax spoke again. Historian, tell me something. Do you think we could fight them again, if war came once more? Velmora considered the question carefully. I do not know, Commander. I do, Krelax said. We could not. We would lose again. Worse this time, because now they know everything about us. Remember that when you write your history. Remember what they are capable of. Velmora left him alone in the dark room, surrounded by his memories and scars. The next evening, Velmora returned to find Krelax already waiting. He had arranged several data crystals on the table. Each one glowed softly with stored information. These are battle recordings, he said as she entered. Naval engagements. I have watched them 1,000 times, trying to understand. Sit. You need to see what I saw. Velmora activated her recording device and sat down. Krelax inserted one of the crystals into a projector. A holographic display filled the space between them, showing a star field and 2 groups of ships. This is the Battle of the Outer Markers, Krelax said. 3 years into the war. We had 37 warships. The humans had 15. By all tactical calculations, we should have won easily. The hologram began to move, showing the battle unfold. The Zenthari fleet advanced in perfect formation. The human ships scattered into smaller groups. Our doctrine was simple, Krelax explained. Maintain formation. Focus fire on one target at a time. Retreat if casualties exceed 12%. This doctrine had won us 100 battles against other species. It was proven, effective, safe. The hologram showed the 2 fleets engaging. Energy beams and missiles crossed the space between them. Humans do not have doctrine like ours. They have guidelines, suggestions, but each captain can make their own choices. This seemed chaotic to us, disorganized. We thought it was a weakness. Velmora watched as the human ships moved in unpredictable patterns. They would attack, pull back, attack from a different angle. We destroyed 3 of their ships quickly, Krelax said. His voice was flat, emotionless. But something was wrong. They were not trying to win the battle. They were learning. Each attack taught them more about our weapons, our tactics, our timing. The hologram showed a human ship taking heavy damage. Its hull was breached in several places. Fires burned inside it. This ship was called the Valiant. Its captain was Kyle Stevens. He should have retreated. His ship was crippled, but instead, he did something that changed the entire war. Velmora leaned forward as the hologram showed the Valiant turning toward the Zenthari flagship. He rammed us? She asked. He rammed our carrier, the largest ship in the fleet. The explosion destroyed both vessels instantly. 3,000 Zenthari died. 50 humans died. But that sacrifice broke our formation. It created chaos in our ranks, and the other human ships exploited that chaos perfectly. Krelax stopped the hologram. Do you understand? Stevens traded his ship and his crew for one of ours. To a Zenthari, this is insanity. We calculate value. A small ship for a large ship is a bad trade if you lose more crew. But humans do not calculate like this. They think about the effect on the battle, on the war. They think bigger. He started the hologram again. The remaining human ships attacked with renewed aggression. We lost 7 more ships in the next hour. Our casualties reached 15%. I ordered a retreat. The human ships chased us for 2 days, harassing us, preventing us from regrouping. We limped back to base having lost nearly half our fleet. Krelax removed the crystal and inserted another. This next recording is more disturbing. It shows what humans do when they board our ships. The hologram changed to show the interior of a Zenthari vessel. Human soldiers in armor moved through the corridors. Zenthari are larger than humans, stronger in direct combat. We have 4 arms to their 2. We should dominate in close quarters. But we do not. The hologram showed human soldiers moving with practiced coordination. They used their weapons efficiently, covering each other, advancing steadily. Humans evolved fighting each other in close quarters. They have thousands of years of experience in hand-to-hand combat. They train constantly. Every human soldier knows multiple ways to kill with their bare hands. Velmora watched as the human team cleared room after room. Their movements were fluid, almost like a dance. When Zenthari soldiers appeared, the humans reacted instantly, working together to overwhelm them. "We captured one of their training manuals," Krelax said. "It described something they call close quarters battle. They practice entering rooms, clearing corridors, fighting in tight spaces. They practice until these movements become automatic. They do not think. They react." "We have combat training as well," Velmora said. "Not like this. Zenthari train for open battle. We train to use our size and reach. But human ships have human-sized corridors. Human stations have human-sized rooms. When they fight on their own ground, they are perfect. And when they board our ships, they treat it like their ground." Krelax paused the hologram again. "But the worst thing is not their skill. The worst thing is their determination. Watch this." He restarted the recording. It showed a human soldier being wounded by a Zenthari defender. The soldier fell, bleeding. His teammates moved past him, continuing the mission. But then the wounded soldier pulled something from his belt. "He is too injured to continue," Velmora said. "Watch," Krelax said grimly. The wounded soldier crawled toward a group of Zenthari soldiers who were trying to retake the corridor. When he reached them, he activated the device in his hand. The explosion filled the screen. "A dead man's trigger," Krelax explained. "If he cannot win the fight, he makes sure the enemy does not win either. We found 12 examples of this in various battles. Humans who knew they were dying, using their deaths as weapons." He removed the crystal. "This psychological warfare broke many of my soldiers. They were afraid to fight humans in close quarters. They knew that even if they won, even if they killed the human, that human might still kill them in return." Krelax reached for another crystal, but his hand hesitated over it. "This next recording is from our science officer, Beth Palmer. She defected to the humans early in the war. Before she left, she filed a report that no one read carefully. If we had, perhaps things would have been different." He inserted the crystal. A holographic image of a Zenthari scientist appeared. She began to speak in recorded lecture format. "Humans are pursuit predators," the recording said. "This means they evolved to chase prey over long distances. Their bodies are designed for endurance, not speed or strength. They can walk for days with minimal food and water. They can function in extreme temperatures. They heal quickly from injuries. And most importantly, they do not give up." The recording continued. "Other predators in the galaxy evolved to ambush prey, kill quickly or abandon the hunt. Humans are different. They track prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They have more endurance than any other species we have encountered. In warfare, this translates to an enemy that never stops, never retreats for long, and never surrenders. Recommendation: avoid extended conflict with humans at all costs." Krelax stopped the recording. "We ignored her report. We thought she was being dramatic. We were wrong." He gathered all the crystals and placed them back in their container. After the Battle of the Outer Markers, Admiral Quintal, our Supreme Commander, ordered a general retreat from human space. He said we needed to regroup and develop new strategies. But I saw his face when he gave that order. He was afraid. For the first time in Zenthari history, we withdrew from a war we could still win numerically. "Why?" Velmora asked. Because we finally understood what we were fighting. Not just humans, but something deeper. We were fighting a species that evolved to never give up. A species that would chase us across the stars if necessary. A species that was willing to lose 9 out of 10 soldiers if it meant the 10th one would win. Krelax looked directly at Velmora. We calculate acceptable losses. Humans calculate acceptable sacrifices. There is a difference. We fight until the cost is too high. They fight until they win or everyone is dead. And they have many more soldiers willing to die than we have soldiers willing to risk 12% casualties. He stood and walked to the window. The city lights reflected in his crystalline eyes. Tomorrow I will tell you about Earth, about what happened when we tried to break their will by attacking their home. That is when I learned the true horror of fighting humans. When you threaten their home, they become something else entirely. Something that still haunts my dreams. Velmora saved her recordings and prepared to leave. At the door, she turned back. Commander, did Admiral Quintal ever explain his retreat order? Krelax was quiet for a moment. He said one thing that I remember. He said, we can lose ships and rebuild them. We can lose soldiers and recruit more. But if we lose the will to fight, we lose everything. And the humans have already won that battle. Krelax did not wait for Velmora to sit before he began speaking. She had barely entered the room when his words came out, harsh and bitter. I carry shame for what we did to Earth. I will carry it until I die. Perhaps that is why I cannot heal these scars. I need to remember. I need to feel the pain. Velmora set up her recording equipment quickly and sat down. Krelax stood by the window, not looking at her. The High Council made a decision. They said if we could not defeat the humans militarily, we would break their spirit. We would bomb Earth from orbit, destroy their cities, force them to surrender or watch their homeworld die. His hands clenched into fists. I argued against this plan. I told them it would not work. I had seen humans fight. I knew that threatening their home would only make them more dangerous. But the Council did not listen. They called me a coward. They gave the order. He finally turned to face her. I followed that order. That is my shame. I commanded the ships that fired on Earth. I watched the cities burn. I told myself I was a soldier following orders. But that excuse feels hollow now. 60 years later. Velmora said nothing. She let him continue at his own pace. We hit military targets first, bases, shipyards, weapon factories. Then the Council ordered us to hit civilian areas, population centers. They wanted to terrorize the humans into submission. We turned 3 cities into glass and ash in a single day. Krelax sat down heavily. The Council believed this would end the war. They thought humans would see the destruction and lose hope. They thought wrong. What happened? Velmora asked softly. The humans became fury itself. Every attack we made fueled their resistance. Where we destroyed 1 weapons factory, they built 3 more in hidden locations. Where we killed civilians, those civilians' families joined the fight. Children who lost parents became soldiers. Parents who lost children became weapons. He pulled out another data crystal. I have recordings from our occupation forces on Earth. Let me show you what happened on the ground. The hologram displayed a ruined city. Zenthari soldiers patrolled the broken streets. Everything seemed quiet. This is Chicago, 3 days after we occupied it. We had 10,000 troops controlling the city. The human military had evacuated. We thought it was secured. The hologram showed an explosion. One of the Zenthari patrols vanished in fire and debris. That was the first attack, a hidden bomb planted by civilians. We searched for the ones responsible. We found nothing. The next day, 3 more patrols were hit, then 5, then 12. The attacks came from everywhere and nowhere. The hologram changed to show a Zenthari command post. Officers studied maps and tried to coordinate responses. We learned that a resistance network had formed within hours of our landing. led by a man named Greg Norton. He was not military. He was a teacher before the war, but he organized thousands of civilians into a fighting force. How did civilians fight trained soldiers? Velmora asked. With intelligence, patience, and creativity. They knew the city, every street, every building, every tunnel. They moved through places we could not follow. They used the ruins to their advantage, and they had one weapon we could not counter. What weapon? They had nothing to lose. Their homes were destroyed. Their families were dead or scattered. They had no reason to surrender, no reason to preserve themselves. They fought like people who were already dead and just wanted to take us with them. Krelax changed the hologram to show an underground medical facility. Human doctors worked on wounded resistance fighters in crude conditions. This is Dr. Lisa Hayes. She ran a medical network in the underground tunnels beneath Chicago. She kept wounded fighters alive with limited supplies and no proper equipment. Zenthari doctors later studied her methods. They could not understand how she saved so many with so little. The hologram showed Dr. Hayes working on a soldier with severe injuries. Her hands moved quickly and surely despite the poor conditions. She was not military either. She was a civilian doctor, but she learned field surgery from captured medical texts. She improvised techniques. She refused to let anyone die if she could prevent it. Under her care, human fighters survived injuries that should have been fatal. Krelax paused the recording. We tried to find her facility many times. We knew it existed. We intercepted communications mentioning it. But we could never locate it. The resistance protected her absolutely. He changed to another recording. This one showed a subway station converted into a fortress. This is Commander Rick Torres. He was actual military, one of the few who stayed behind when the main forces evacuated. He held a section of the subway system for 2 weeks with 40 soldiers. Velmora watched as the hologram showed repeated Zenthari assaults on the position. Each time the attacks failed. We had thousands of soldiers. He had 40. We had artillery and air support. He had guns and improvised explosives. We should have overrun him in hours. Instead, we lost hundreds of troops trying to take those tunnels. How did he hold so long? Strategy and sacrifice. He knew the tunnels perfectly. He set traps in some passages. He collapsed others. He forced us to come at him through narrow corridors where our numbers meant nothing. And his soldiers fought like demons. Every one of them died defending that position, but they killed 30 Zenthari for each human lost. Krelax's voice grew softer. When we finally took the position, we found their last message scratched into the wall. It said, "We held. They will remember." And we do remember. Every Zenthari soldier who was there remembers. He stood and paced the room. But the resistance was not just soldiers and doctors. Everyone fought. Everyone. The hologram changed again, showing younger humans moving through ruins at night. These are children, some as young as 12 years old. They ran messages between resistance cells. They planted listening devices in our command posts. They stole supplies. We caught one girl carrying intelligence about our troop movements. She was 13. When we interrogated her, she spit in my face and told me nothing. Krelax's voice broke slightly. We did not know what to do with child soldiers. Zenthari do not use children in warfare. It is unthinkable to us, but humans were different. These children volunteered. Their parents could not stop them. They wanted to fight for their world. What happened to the girl? Velmora asked. We held her for 2 days. Then the resistance raided our detention facility and freed all the prisoners, including her. We never caught her again, but we intercepted communications that mentioned her. She continued running intelligence operations for the rest of the war, a child doing the work of trained spies. He removed the crystal and held it in his hands. This is what I mean when I say we could not break them. We destroyed their cities, killed their people, occupied their world. And they fought harder. They became more determined. They turned every survivor into a weapon against us. The records say we maintained control of Earth for 6 months, Velmora said. Control is a generous word. We held some cities. We patrolled some areas. But we never truly controlled anything. Every day was a battle. Every night brought new attacks. Our soldiers could not sleep. They could not relax. They lived in constant fear. Krelax met her eyes. And then we learned that while we were trying to hold Earth, the humans had been preparing their counterattack. They had not put all their forces on one world. They had bases on Europa, on Titan, in the asteroid belt, hidden shipyards building new warships. They had been planning for this. They knew we might attack Earth, and they had prepared to fight back. He walked back to the window. The counter-offensive launched from all directions at once. Human fleets that should not have existed appeared in our space. Ships we did not know they had. Weapons we had not seen before. They had learned from captured Zenthari technology and improved it. They took your weapons and made them better? Velmora asked, shocked. Yes. They are very good at learning, very good at adapting. They took our shield technology and made it more efficient. They took our weapons and made them hit harder. They studied everything we did and found ways to do it better. Krelax turned back to her. That is when the High Council finally understood what I had been saying. We were not fighting a primitive species. We were fighting a species that excelled at war, a species that treated conflict as a learning experience, a species that became stronger every time we hurt them. What did the Council do? They ordered a full retreat from Earth. We evacuated our occupation forces as quickly as possible. Many soldiers died during the withdrawal. The resistance attacked us constantly. Greg Norton's network, Dr. Hayes's wounded fighters, Rick Torres's example, those brave children. They all fought to drive us off their world. He sat down again, looking exhausted. When we left Earth's orbit for the last time, I looked back at the planet. Smoke rose from 100 places where cities had burned. But the planet was still alive, still fighting. I realized then that we had already lost. We just did not know it yet. Velmora stopped her recording. Tomorrow you will tell me about the end? Yes, Krelax said quietly. Tomorrow I will tell you about the peace, and why it terrifies me more than the war ever did. On the final day, Velmora arrived to find Krelax sitting in darkness. He had not turned on the lights. The only illumination came from the city glow through the window. She entered quietly and sat without speaking. After a long silence, Krelax spoke. Do you know why we surrendered, historian? The young ones today think we won the war. They think we made peace from a position of strength. They are wrong. He stood and finally activated the room lights. His face looked older than before, as if telling his story had aged him. We surrendered because we had no choice. We surrendered because continuing the war would have destroyed us completely, and we knew it. Velmora prepared her recording device one last time. Tell me about the end. Krelax pulled out a final data crystal. This is from the Battle of Kriksoth, our border world, the last major battle of the war. The hologram showed two massive fleets facing each other in space. The Zenthari fleet was larger, but something about the human fleet looked different. We had numerical superiority, 300 ships to their 200. The High Council believed we could win a decisive victory and force the humans back. They did not understand what they were seeing. He pointed to the human ships in the hologram. Look closely at their vessels. Some of those hulls are Zenthari design, ships we had lost in previous battles, salvaged and repaired by human engineers. But they did not just repair them. They modified them, improved them. The hologram began showing the battle. The human fleet moved with coordination that the early war fleets had lacked. 5 years of fighting had taught them everything about space combat. They knew our tactics better than some of our own commanders. They predicted our movements. They countered our strategies before we could implement them. The battle raged across the hologram display. Ships from both sides exploded or suffered critical damage, but the human fleet fought with a precision that seemed almost mechanical. We lost 60 ships in the first hour. They lost 20. The mathematics were clear. We were losing a war of attrition against an enemy with fewer resources. That should have been impossible. How did they do it? Velmora asked. Efficiency. Every human ship fought at maximum effectiveness. Every shot counted. Every movement had purpose. They wasted nothing. Meanwhile, our commanders were afraid, hesitant. They remembered 5 years of defeats. They remembered watching humans do impossible things. That fear made them slow. Krelax paused the hologram at the moment the Zenthari fleet began to withdraw. I gave the order to retreat. Not the High Council, not Admiral Quintal, me. I was the senior commander present, and I made the decision that ended the war. I ordered our fleet to fall back because I knew if we stayed, we would be destroyed. He looked at Velmora directly. Do you understand what I am telling you? We ran away. The mighty Zenthari Empire, which had conquered 20 star systems, ran from 200 human ships. That is the truth that your history texts do not tell. The texts say we negotiated peace from mutual respect, Velmora said quietly. Another lie, Krelax said bitterly. We negotiated because we were beaten. The humans could have pressed their advantage. They could have invaded our territory, but they offered peace instead. He activated another recording. This one showed a conference room. Zenthari officials sat on one side of a table. On the other side sat human negotiators. This is Ambassador Claire Mitchell. She led the human delegation. Watch her carefully. The recording showed Ambassador Mitchell speaking calmly to the Zenthari officials. Her words were measured and professional. She does not seem threatening, Velmora observed. That is what makes her so dangerous. She did not need to threaten. The threat was already understood. She simply stated facts. The humans could continue the war. They had the industrial capacity. They had the trained soldiers. They had the will to fight for another decade if necessary. Krelax fast-forwarded the recording. But then she said something that changed everything. She said humans wanted peace. Not because they were weak, not because they were tired, but because they respected us for fighting well. She said there had been enough death on both sides. That seems generous, Velmora said. It was. Terrifyingly generous. Because it meant they could have destroyed us but chose not to. They held our fate in their hands and offered mercy. Do you know how humbling that is? To be beaten by an enemy and then shown kindness? He stopped the recording. The peace terms were simple. Both sides would withdraw to original borders. No reparations, no punishments, just peace and a promise to never fight again. Those terms favor neither side, Velmora said. Exactly. The humans did not want to conquer us. They never did. They only wanted to be left alone. All those deaths, all that destruction, because we could not accept that some species just want to live in peace. Krelax walked to his cabinet and removed one more object. It was a small piece of fabric, torn and stained. This is from a human uniform. It belonged to a Marine named Tony Blake. He served under Amy Chen, the officer I mentioned before. After the war, there was a ceremony. Veterans from both sides met to honor the dead. I attended. Tony Blake found me there. His voice became softer. He was old by then. The war had aged him beyond his years. Scars covered his arms. He walked with difficulty. But when he saw me, he did not show anger. He offered to shake my hand. Did you? Velmora asked. I did, and he gave me this piece of his uniform. He said it was from the battle on Mars, where I had been wounded. He said he wanted me to have it as a reminder that even enemies can become friends. Krelax held the fabric carefully. That simple gesture taught me more about humans than 5 years of war. They can fight with terrifying intensity, but they can also forgive. They can show kindness to those who tried to kill them. I do not understand it. I only know it is real." He placed the fabric back in the cabinet with the other relics. "Tony Blake died 5 years ago. I attended his funeral. His family welcomed me. They did not blame me for the war. They said he would have wanted me there." Velmora was quiet for a moment. "Commander, you said the peace terrifies you more than the war. Why?" Krelax turned to face her fully. "Because we are forgetting. The young Zenthari see humans as trade partners. They see them as allies. They forget that humans are the apex predator of the galaxy. They forget what humans are capable of when threatened." He moved closer to where she sat. "I agreed to this interview to remind our people, to warn them. Never provoke humans again. Never threaten their homes. Never assume their kindness means weakness. They showed us mercy once. They might not do so twice." "Surely they would not attack without cause," Velmora said. "No, they would not. That is exactly my point. If we leave them in peace, they will leave us in peace. But if we ever threaten them again, they will finish what they started. And this time, they will not offer generous peace terms." He pointed to his scars. "These remind me every day of what we faced. I keep them unhealed deliberately. When young Zenthari see them and ask questions, I tell them the truth. I tell them about Danny Price fighting for 6 hours with broken bones, about Dr. Hayes saving lives in a tunnel, about child soldiers running intelligence operations, about ships ramming into our carriers, about a species that never surrenders." Velmora stood and prepared to leave. "I will write everything accurately, Commander. The true history, not the official version." "Good," Krelax said. "Make sure the young ones understand. We are alive today because humans chose to let us live. That is not weakness on their part. That is strength. The strength to show mercy to a defeated enemy." He walked her to the door. "One more thing, historian. In your report, include this message. If humanity ever calls for our aid, we must answer. Without question, without hesitation. We owe them that much. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they made us partners. That debt can never be fully repaid." Velmora bowed respectfully. "I will include your message, Commander. Thank you for sharing your story." As she walked down the long hallway, Velmora thought about everything she had learned. The official histories would need to be rewritten. The truth needed to be told. Future generations needed to understand what the war really cost and what the peace really meant. Behind her, Krelax stood in his doorway watching her leave. When she disappeared around a corner, he returned to his dark room. He sat by the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue world that had brought an empire to its knees. He touched his scars and remembered. He would always remember, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure others remembered too. Because the greatest danger was not human strength. The greatest danger was forgetting what that strength could do. The peace between humans and Zenthari held strong for 60 years and would continue for centuries more. But it held because people like Krelax never forgot the price of war. They never forgot what they had faced, and they made sure their children and their children's children would never forget either. Some species learn wisdom through philosophy. Some learn through science. The Zenthari learned through war. They learned that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one with the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. It was the species that refused to give up, the species that fought harder when cornered, the species that showed mercy to defeated enemies, the species called humans. And that was a lesson worth remembering forever.